with the Southwest Chapter Reunion of the 12th Armored Division in Abilene, Texas. Today I'm interviewing Mr. Jack Priestley. My name is Charla Henson. I appreciate you letting us talk with you today, and like I told you, we're going to first ask you about your mom and dad and who they were and where they came from and some information like that.
Well, my parents were both born here in the United States. All of my mother's siblings were also born here. My father was one of, I think, two siblings that were born in the United States. Three of them were born, and I think he was one of 7 children. And I think 4 of them were born in Scotland, of parents who migrated from Ireland. So I don't know if I'm half Scotch or all Irish or what, but anyway, that's pretty much the history.
Okay, what's your mother's name and?
My mother's maiden name was Nellie Doherty. And of course, my father's name was Mr. Priestley.
Oh, did he have a first name?
Yeah, Peter Thomas.
What part of the country are they from?
Well, they're all from Chicago area. I was born and raised in Chicago. Lived there until, I went in the Army, and then came back home to Chicago and lived there until 1955 when I moved to Wichita, Kansas, and went to work for the good old Boeing Airplane Company. And left Wichita in 1970 and moved to Norman, Oklahoma to work for the U.S. Postal Service. They had a big operation there. Started out, was known as the Oklahoma Postal Training Operation. They trained maintenance technicians doing electronic repair and things like that on some of this new equipment. And then one day I retired.
Okay.
And that's the best job I've ever had.
Okay, you've had fun doing that, huh?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Tell me the date of your birth.
I was born on May 11th, 1926.
Okay, and did you have brothers or sisters?
I have a brother, Tom, who is almost 2 years older than me. And I have 2 sisters, Dorothy and Catherine. And they're all living in the Chicago area.
Tell me about your high school years.
Well, I went to, it was a parochial school, and it was, back then it was the only, what you would probably define as a vo-tech now, St. Rita High School, where they had the technical courses. You could major in electronics or civil type and aeronautics, which that was my favorite, and I was taking flying lessons, and then when I got drafted, they recommended infantry training.
What year did you get drafted?
October 18th, 1944.
Okay. Tell me about the day that you found out you were drafted and about the circumstances. Does it stand out in your mind?
Some things do. You know, it's strange. I can remember my father walking me up to the draft board about 5:30 in the morning, and it was on a streetcar line in the neighborhood, a couple of blocks from home, and all of us draftees gathered there and reported, checked in, and they had a chartered streetcar, and they took us all the way downtown where we were sworn in. No transfers. That motorman, he just hit all the switches and took us right to where we had to go. And then we were transferred to Fort Sheridan, Illinois, where we were issued uniforms and given some basic instructions in close order drill and all that Mickey Mouse. And I guess we were given a bunch of aptitude tests there, and then we were shipped out to Camp Blanding, Florida for basic training.
How long were you in? What was exactly the name of the first place you were at? Was it just?
Fort Sheridan, Illinois.
Okay, and what was the term for that?
I suppose it'd be an induction procedure, yeah.
Okay. and that's where you went through your basic, tell me about basic training, and was it what you expected?
Yeah, probably. Of course, I knew a lot of friends that had already been gone through that kind of thing, and I had a pretty good idea what was going to happen. And we did the training we did there was kind of oriented toward the Pacific. We did some night maneuvers going through swamps and things like that, you know. The Battle of when the 12th Armored Division was getting beat up at Herlesheim, I was in basic training, and our training had been cut short. We were back then. I think there was 17 weeks of basic training, and they cut it to 15, and that put us into around February of '45. And we got a delay en route to Fort Meade, Maryland. And I went home to Chicago for, I think, 5 days, something like that. Went back to Fort Meade, and we were there. They were having I guess, a queue problem, or logistics, transporting all these troops, trying to get them over to Europe for replacements. And we were probably about 2 weeks at Fort Meade, or whatever the name, Fort Meade. And from there, we went to Camp Shanks, New York, spent a few days there, and we got a couple of passes into New York City and saw all the sights and Radio City Music Hall and all that good thing, you know. Then we boarded a ship. And it was 14 days of misery. The SS Brazil was the name of it. It had formerly been a lush passenger ship. And I was assigned as a member of the garbage squad for 14 days. And we had to haul the stuff up during the day, you know, the morning meal and the noon meal, and dump it in hoppers in the back of the ship, store it until nighttime. And then we hauled up the nighttime meal and dumped it in the hoppers. And then, of course, we opened up the hoppers and dumped it all. And then we had to flush them with a hose, you know, with the hoppers open. And if you slipped, well, you were gone. Wonderful time.
Were y'all given one job to do? I mean, they didn't rotate it, or how did you
no.
do such a wonderful job?
Well, there was I don't know how I got selected, but anyway, we had a little blue card. It was a KP pass, and it gave us kind of free run of the ship. You know, they had MPs stationed, you couldn't go everywhere on the ship. You had to stay in your own little area. But we could flash these cards, and they'd let us go. And they had cooks that were from Algeria or someplace, didn't speak English. And we would sometimes get agitating them. And when they'd come after you with a meat cleaver. And as soon as they'd start to chase us, one of the other guys that had a KP card, well, he'd run and grab a half a chicken that was being baked. We'd do things like that. So we did have some advantages over the troops that didn't have anything to do except lose their food over the rail. You know.
When you got on that ship, did you know exactly where you were? Did you know you were going to the 12th Armored? Or was everybody on that ship a part of that?
I think just about everybody that was in the basic training battalion that I took basic training in, I think we all ended up in the 12th Armored Division. I know a lot of them did. And then when maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I was in one of the last groups of replacements that joined it. As far as I know, my world in the 12th Armored consisted of 1st Squad, 1st Platoon, Company C, 17th Armored Infantry. Beyond that, beyond those 14 people, it was a different world. And There were some more replacements came in after me, but I was one of the first groups to leave when they started to break up the outfit. And I ended up in the 86th Division, reassigned to the 86th, which was on a troop ship headed to invade Tokyo. And of course, I had the 30-day furlough coming back from overseas. Got to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, and they were processing us through all night long. The next afternoon, we boarded a train. We were all split up. I was headed for Camp Grand, Illinois. Wherever, they were headed all over the country from there. And that was VJ Day. So I ended up in Camp Gruber, Oklahoma. What a hellhole that was. As a member of a provisional company of the 86th. So they didn't know what to do with us. The war was over, but here we were, part of a division that was gone. So I was reassigned to the 2nd Division at Camp Swift, Texas. And probably there must have been hundreds of 12th Armored Division people that ended up in the 2nd Division, 2nd Infantry Division. And then I went from there to into San Francisco for a parade on Army Day in April of '46, and then we moved to Fort Lewis, Washington, and pretty soon I got out and went home.
So do you remember what day you, okay. Did y'all go to England?
No.
Y'all go, where did
Went to
you?
Le Havre, right to Le Havre.
Okay, so tell me about that process of reaching Le Havre and finding out where you were supposed to go.
Oh, nobody told us. You just went where they ordered you to go. The ship landed about, I think about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and we didn't leave the ship until it was dark. We were the last to leave our group, and they marched us to some kind of a railroad station. It was, a few little light bulbs hanging along, and there was Red Cross people there passing out donuts and coffee. And then we boarded these illustrious 40 and 8s. You've heard of them.
The what?
40 and 8s.
Oh.
And we spent the night.
For our tape, tell us what 40 and 8, because some people are not going to know this at some point.
Well, a 40 and 8 is a name given to a boxcar. It's got 4 wheels. It's designed to hold 8 horses or 40 humans. And I think we were restricted to 35. I think they really let us go easy. We went on the train that way to Toul, France, to a repo depot. Some people call it a repo depot, and some people call it a repo depot. So take your choice. But that's where we went, and we spent I don't know, maybe a week there or less, 5 or 6 days maybe. Finally got our duffel bags caught up with us, and we were able to shave and kind of get cleaned up. And then we went to, and I can't remember the mode of transportation, I'm probably by truck, to Haguenau. And actually at that time, we were probably already assigned to the 12th Armored Division, but weren't aware of it. We were actually following them, trying to catch up with them. And I remember sleeping in a stable in Haguenau with a number of others, and we were all classified as, I can't remember the MOS numbers. We were machine gunners and mortar gunners. That's what we qualified for in basic training. The TO weapon was a Colt 45 pistol, and that's what we were issued. And you had to sleep with them under your head. They were stolen from there in Haguenau. A bunch of them were stolen. Anyway, from there we went to, we boarded trucks again and drove all day long and crossed the Rhine, and we ended up in a field, bivouacked in pup tents. And here again, I'm a little cloudy on time, and, but we spent a couple of days there, and then we ended up at the 12th Armored Division headquarters, where we were told what outfit to join, and ended up in C Company on the 17th Armored Infantry.
Tell me about walking up and realizing this is the group of men that you're going to be with.
Well, I thought they were all, when I talk to people here that I've met in these reunions and everything, I ask them, I tell them, certain names that I remember in my squad. The old timers, they never heard of them. And when I joined the outfit, everybody there was there before me. I figured they were there all the time. That's the kind of thing you get in your head. But most of them were replacements also. And maybe they were only there a week before I was, or who knows. But they were, they had a buddy system. I don't know if you ever heard about that. And
Go ahead and tell us, though.
well, they assign you to you pair up with somebody. You cover each other, like when you're clearing a house, one covers the other one when they go in and everything. And my buddy turned out to be a man that was in his 40s. And he was known as Red Dog. And I didn't realize it at the time, but he was a drunk. And I won't mention his name. That's enough, the nickname. And I remember one night he and I were pulling guard duty, and it was the rumor was that there's going to be a counterattack, and somebody came and told me to get the bazooka out, and I was fooling around in the dark trying to get it out of the floor well and everything. And I finally got it out and got it loaded and nearly blew myself up doing it, and scared, And then I thought, haven't heard, hey, Red Dog. No answer. I'm thinking, gee, did they get him? Hey, Red Dog. No response. About the fourth time, he says, what do you want, kid? Like, be quiet. Leave, don't bother me. Quite a guy. And let's see what else. The first time we cleared a town, I was scared. And he was ahead of me, and he was just as calm as could be. And I didn't realize he was, solaced. Our platoon squad leader would ask him, plead with him, don't drink until we get back, and then you can have his canteen was always full of wine, I guess, or something more, Calvados, or.
Who was your captain?
Steve Gambos, I think was his name. And
What was he like?
I never got to know him. I think he was kind of arrogant. I went over as a private and returned as a private. No promotions to PFC or anything like that. Of course, I was a short timer. Arrived late and left early, like many of them did. And
Tell me about the first day that you had to go in. Well, would be a battle or clearing the town. Was that the first day you had cleared the town? Was the day that?
No, the day that I joined the company and got assigned to the squad and everything, I'm going to back up a little bit. We were issued, when we got overseas, when we got there overseas, we were issued sleeping bags. And they were pretty comfortable. We got to the 12th Armored Division, they took them away and gave us blankets. And the first night in the 12th Armored Division, I was on the ground with my 2 blankets, and it was the most miserable night I ever spent. In the morning is when, just at daybreak, one of the little German Liaison planes came over and started throwing out Panzerfaust, bombing us with. And I guess that was my introduction to war.
What was it like?
kind of scary.
Do you remember the sounds or the smells of that?
Well, yeah, I've rifle fire, you know, there's an odor of the gunpowder, and that they issued us, that's another thing they did. When I got to the 12th Armored Division headquarters, they issued us all M1 rifles. And I asked this first sergeant, what do I do with this 45? And he said, keep it, throw it away, turn it in. It doesn't matter to me. So I turned it in. I didn't want to, in basic training, I couldn't hit anything with it anyway. I was pretty good at the rifle and machine gun. I could handle one of those okay. But then the rifle that they gave us, we never had an opportunity to zero them in. So, and you know, that's important. Seems to me like when you take basic training, you spend all that time with a rifle and you really get to know it, how to set the sights and everything. That should be yours forevermore, but instead you turn them in and then they give you a new one when you get overseas. Many things I didn't understand about military life.
So you went in, so was most of the action you saw was clearing towns, and what kind of action did you see?
Well, I rode the back of a tank across the Danube. There was, and there wasn't much fight. Well, it was mostly ahead of us. We were waiting on a road paralleling the Danube, and I can remember it being kind of a rainy, drizzly kind of a day, and the convoy had just come to a halt. We were just parked on this road, and first thing you know, there was all kinds of little fires burning in the road. You know, people picking up pieces of wood off, tree branches, and that had fallen, and holding out their mess kit cups, heating water for making coffee or something. Kind of like a hobo camp is what it was. And pretty soon we knew then what the holdup was. There was Jeeps were coming back with litters on them. Nervous. Scary. And then they drove us, we finally drove to it was kind of like a roadhouse, a big parking lot, kind of, gravel parking, and they parked all the half tracks military style. Line them up, row on row. And we started getting out, and all of a sudden here come the artillery. And we all scattered and dove in in the culverts, and pretty soon it let up, and a tank company came along, and we boarded the tanks and rode the back of them. And I nearly went off one time when he turned across the bridge, going over the Danube. I started to slide, and they had luggage. They do all kinds of things. Built a big luggage rack on the back, and among the things in this luggage rack was a case of beer, and it had these bottles that I don't know if you ever seen them. They had the wire retained caps on them. The cap stayed with the bottle all the time. And when I started to slide, my heels went into this case of beer, and I just wiped out. And to this day, I don't know who that tank crew was, but I'd like to apologize.
So you got across the Danube, and then kind of what else has happened after that?
Well, we just, every now and then we'd come to a town, and we'd have to clear it and maybe capture a few prisoners, and then we ended up in, I can remember entering this, can't remember the name of the town, but it's featured here on some of where they had the prison camp. Lauingen, you know the one I mean. And Landsberg. We weren't the first ones there. As a matter of fact, when we got there, the military government had come in, United States Army military government, and prohibited us. We weren't allowed in there. But there was a bad odor in the town. It was just, like flesh. It was just. So it wasn't nice, but we never did get inside, and we didn't see anything that was any bodies or anything in there. At least I didn't. weren't allowed in.
By the time you got there, were you aware of what it was?
Mm-mm. Well, after we were there, we were told what it was, but when we got into the town, I didn't know. We were, the old story about mushrooms, they keep you in the dark. And then I rode on this famous 59-mile drive into enemy territory. And a few days after that, when our service company finally caught up with us, they refueled us. We went on to, I can't remember the name of the town. I kept, when I started out, I had a little postcard that I kept in my pocket. And every town I came to, I wrote the date in the town. And I lost it 20 years ago. It's gone now. But anyway, we came into this town. It's the town we ended up in when the war was over. Well, we were relieved by the 36th Division. And a few days later, when the war was over, there's a story there about, in our company history book, there's a story about an SS trooper being killed there in this little town. And I remember the incident because I was fooling with we came into this town, and it was the first really day that it was a beautiful day. The sun was out and kind of warm, and because we had encountered snow and nothing. It was just bad weather, and there was no fire, no war going on. We didn't hear any gunfire at all anywhere. It was just so nice and quiet. And there was a big building on a corner of a dirt high road intersection, and there was a German staff car parked there, a big old Daimler Benz, and a sidecar motorcycle, our German Army motorcycle. And I was fooling around with this car looking for booby traps and thinking, boy, if I get this started, I'll tool around here in big time. And I couldn't get it started, and so then I went working on the motorcycle, and they had pulled the magneto wires on it, and I twisted them together, and it started up, and I was getting ready to go for a ride. And all of a sudden, this firing started, and leaves blew right from where I was. I thought somebody was shooting at me at first. And I had my rifle right with me and everything, and I ran around to the corner of the building, and I squatted down with looking both. I didn't know where they were coming from. And fell in the squad, John Dwyer. Came running around. He reminded me of an Indian with a scalp. I got him. He's holding a holster with a Luger in it. Evidently, this SS trooper started firing, and Dwyer going to head back to the company, CP, to say, we got problems here. And he turns around the corner of the building, the opposite corner that I was on, and who does he encounter but this SS trooper he's got a machine pistol. And when Dwyer saw him, it scared him, and he dove into a ditch and rolled over with his M1 and come up firing, and they were firing at each other, and he killed him. And when I went back to look, well, the guy, Dwyer emptied his rifle on the guy, and there was one bullet, it almost scalped him. It hit him here and deflected off, and the scalp was peeled back, and he was dead, no doubt about it. And Dwyer, as white as a ghost, I got him. And I was thinking, that guy saved some of us from being killed. He never got honorable mention. He should have been at least a Bronze Star or something. Our company commander, that's, what I say. I'm told he died, committed suicide, but I don't know if this is true or not. He owned a bar in Pittsburgh or someplace. It's interesting. You learn about a lot of these people. And the guy that we had for a platoon leader, at least when I was in the outfit, the story that I heard was he was a staff sergeant when he joined the outfit, and he couldn't hold his rank. He was always getting busted for something. And when they were forming the organization, everybody was bucking for first sergeant and platoon sergeant and everything, and he didn't care if school kept or not. He was one of the first ones to get a battlefield commission.
How did that work? How did
Don't ask me, I don't know. Well, leadership, I think, the guy was, he knew what he was doing. We were sitting by a fire one night, we were sitting around, they had to build a fire, and this was a few nights before we did this 59-mile thing, and it was kind of cold, and, they were sitting out, it was out in the open, and we were sitting around the fire just kind of shooting the bull and talking about the $1 million wound. And he put out his foot and he says, aim right there. Like aim for his big toe. And I'm sure he was kidding. I don't think anybody wanted to, but he said, yeah, right there. He said, yeah. And some months later, when I was down at Camp Swift, Texas, I was walking along one day, and who would I see but Lieutenant Haig. And he looked dejected. He was walking along with his hands in his pockets. And, hey, Lieutenant, how are you? And I don't know why I signed over for this lousy outfit. He was in the 2nd Division, and he didn't like it. And I didn't either, really. It was one cycle of basic training after the other, and it was, just not my way of life. I didn't go for it. I worked my way in the motor pool there. I got driving a Jeep, and that's how I ended up acting T5. They told me if I signed over, they'd make me permanent T5. Thanks a lot.
Let's go back to the 59-mile ride. Tell me, how did all that happen, and at what point did you realize what was going on, or did somebody realize what was going on?
We were just running. It was it was an Autobahn, 4-lane divided highway, and we kind of did a leapfrog thing. As I recall, the half tracks were on one side of the road, and the tanks were on the other. And it was a company, a C company, the 17th, and I understand it was C company, the 23rd Tank Battalion. And we kind of played leapfrog. The infantry half track, the lead would come to a bridge and overpass, and they'd jump out and try to secure the bridge, and sometimes they'd be shooting down at German soldiers trying to wire the bridge to destroy it. And everybody would pass over the bridge, and then the first one would become the last one, and the tankers were shooting up everything in sight. If they saw a truck crossing a overpass, maybe half a mile down, you could see the rounds explode when they hit the bridge. Like they'd maybe be a little bit lower. And, interesting ride, real fast.
So was it sort of like tank infantry? Is that how it was sort of set up, or did y'all just all going?
No, it was. They kind of paralleled each other.
Oh, one was on one side.
Yeah, one was on the northbound side, and the other was on the southbound side. Well, like Interstate 20 here. If you took up the whole one side of the road, but eastbound, you were going to. You didn't let anybody get in your way. Just.
So when you stopped, you ran out of gas and all that stuff. How long were y'all there before they caught up?
Oh, 2 or 3 days, I think it was.
So how did y'all fill up for 2 or 3 days?
Well, kind of nervous. We found our half track, the tracks on it were real worn. And in this, I can't remember the name of the Feindorf maybe, or I don't remember the name of the town. There was a half track there that obviously had been captured by the Germans, and it had real good tracks on it. And our service company got up there, and as I recall, they did a switch for us, changed the tracks. Kind of interesting. We had that service company. Those guys were pretty good.
Tell me a little more about the service company. There was one attached to the 17th.
Well, I think each battalion had a service company, and they went wherever they were needed to change a spark plug or replace a clutch or whatever, they'd throw a big tarp over so they could light a light underneath to see what they're doing at night, and they'd work until they were done. They did a good job.
Basically, they were were they like a traveling mechanic?
Yeah, something like that. They had all their supplies in their half track. They seemed to have everything they needed.
Now, were you a rifleman or were you a machine gunnist most of the time, or both?
No, I was.
How did you fit in this?
I was a rifleman.
Okay.
However, we pulled guard duty. Our rifle squad half track had a 30 caliber machine gun, water cooled, and then they had a couple of light 30s, I think, air cooled 30 calibers. The machine gun squad had a 50 caliber on the ring mount and water cooled. But when you're pulling guard duty, of course, you stand in the ring mount and with the gun. I remember one night I was pulling guard duty, and we back up, kind of try to, you don't leave them out where they can be seen, readily seen. You try to find a place where they're kind of undercover, and again, another little town we were in, and going to spend the night probably, and the service company would always follow up, locating the vehicles so they could refuel them with these 5-gallon jerry cans. That's what they brought along, and there was always some guy walking down the road trying to find these vehicles, try to locate them for when the fuel truck came along. I'll never forget this one. It was kind of around dusk, and I saw this guy coming down the road, and I didn't know who he was or anything. I just kind of reached around and swung the gun around in his direction, and boy, he saw me doing that, and he was name, rank, serial number. He didn't, and I didn't, I wasn't threatened. I didn't tell him to halt or anything. I was just getting ready, and I guess he was probably nervous. It was a nervous job. I don't think I would have liked to have done it, because you're exposing yourself to not only the enemy but your own people too. If they don't, somebody a little trigger happy, where they could hurt you.
You were a replacement, and you said it kind of felt like that the other guys might have been replacements.
No, as far as I knew, they were. Everybody was there from day one. They were all old timers, but I don't know that. Now that I meet so many of these people who were original 12th Armored Division people, and they don't recognize any of the names that I tell them about. One of them, Ken Warner, was he was the staff sergeant in charge of the machine gun squad in our platoon. And I asked him about some of the names, and he didn't remember them. He's been at a couple of the reunions. And
who are some of the other men you remember in your platoon, and something about them?
well, let's see, there was my buddy, Red Dog, and John Dwyer, who lived in around Springfield, Massachusetts, East Hampton, Massachusetts, I believe. I tried to look at, I corresponded for years, and here we just kind of drifted away, I guess, and I was back east a number of times and tried to locate him, talking to phone operators and different towns around there, and nobody seemed to know about him, and he'd be up in his 80s. Now, I was a kid. They always look at the kid, well, that was John Dwyer, and then Ken Mead was from Detroit, and he was an artist. And I've got a sketch at home of me that he made when we were at Camp Lucky Strike waiting for a boat to go home. And then there was Andy Siebel. He was from a little town in Illinois, and he had a brother that lived in Chicago, and after the war, we got together quite often on Saturday nights and drank a little beer, and then there was, let's see, who else? Oh, Tony Prashak was our squad leader, and he lived in Gary, Indiana, and Andy Siebel and I, Tony was still overseas, and Andy Siebel and I went out and visited his family one time in Gary. And then the Malott brothers, they were twins. They were from Mount Carmel, Illinois. And they went in the same time I did. They joined the 12th Armored the same time I did. Let's see, who else? Oh, Votaw. He was our scout. He was the guy that walked in front of everybody. Oh, Lordy. You know that we have a company history book. See, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but my book, I've got a little check mark by all the ones in my squad, and plus more ones that I knew, and you know, right off the top of my head now, I'm trouble thinking about who all they are.
What were some of the personalities of the group? Who, you know, usually a squad will have the funny guy or the serious guy or the one who kind of takes care of everybody, or but who was that in with your squad?
Oh golly, I don't know. We had one guy that was kind of a cocky guy, obviously from New Jersey, and oh golly, what was his name? Can't think of it. Oh Lordy, memory is a terrible thing. I could tell you a story about that happened to me just a few days ago. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah.
I volunteer in Norman. Norman, Oklahoma has the state of Oklahoma has a veteran center in Norman, and it's a fairly new building. It's real nice. And I volunteer out there. I go out there 2 mornings a week and visit with these, I call them orphans, ones that don't have any immediate family there, nobody to visit them. And last Friday, I was invited to help out in the Alzheimer's ward. They were having a picnic for all the patients and their wives and family. And they had entertainment there, and I volunteered. I agreed to help out, and I was doling out food. They had like a picnic thing, potato salad and baked beans and everything. And the entertainment consisted of 4 people who were all retirees, you know. And one of them was a violin player who was introduced as a former professor at the University of Oklahoma, music professor. When they were all done eating, this music professor came over and was standing near me having a cup of some iced tea. And I casually mentioned that I understand you're from music department. Oh, you? Yeah, that's right. And I said, well, I have a good friend that's retired from there too, and his name is Bruce Govich. And I said, you know, he's the one that used to sing at all the national anthem at all the football games. Yeah, oh yeah, I know that. And we had, you know, some small talk, and then kind of very sympathetically and confidentially, he says, how long have you been here? And I said, well, I got here about 9:30 this morning. I come out usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays about the same time. And the poor guy was embarrassed. He was so
Oh, that is funny. I do want to ask you about your perception of being a replacement. Did you ever feel like a replacement, or were you ever treated differently, or how do you think that?
Well, I always felt that they used me when they needed me, and when they didn't need me anymore, you're gone, which is true. It's what happened. But the thing that amazed me, so many of these people well, not only our squad but in the platoon, who I thought were old timers, they left the same time I did. Some of them maybe were going home to be discharged, and others ended up Camp Swift, Texas with me. Good old Camp Swift. But we had days when it'd just be dry, dust, the roads weren't all paved, and some of the movies that you see in these films, that you've got now, you see the mud and everything, but when the mud dried up, it was dust, and I'd get so filthy dirty, and I decided that one way to kind of improve things, I just cut off all my hair. And I found a scissors someplace, and I just started clipping, and I cut all my hair off, and it was cold without any hair. So I put on, I don't know if you've ever seen them, they used to have these little knit caps with a little peak on them that fit under your helmet. Well, I put that on all when I was out, when we're traveling, and when you had an opportunity to wash your face, well, I just had all face to wash. And we came into this town of Bopfingen, and our squad was billeted in a guest house. And there was a man and woman that lived there, a husband and wife that ran this guest house. And we told them what part of their building they could have and what part we were going to take. In the main room, like where the customers would come to drink their beer and everything, they had a big table, kind of like a picnic table. And our squad, we got 10-in-1 rations, and 10-in-1 rations, same. It's C rations in a bigger can. So, but anyway, we let them eat with us. We fed them. And this one day, I came in to eat, and I just was taught you don't eat with your hat on. And I took this cap off, and this woman had been serving coffee. And when I took the cap off, she looked at me and she started laughing. And then she went, "Don't laugh at foreign soldiers." It scared her. And of course, it didn't bother me. I kind of chuckled. And turned out she had a son who was a prisoner of war in Montana, and she was worried about him. And in our pidgin English and German, I told her, "He's got nothing to worry about. He's in God's country." And she didn't know what I was talking. I said, "Alps. They're staying in Alps?" "Yeah. Montana Alps." Well, a lot of those people, I don't know. I found this guy, this SS trooper, that was killed by Dwyer, had an American driver's license that probably he had taken from somebody that he killed. And you wonder about these people. You think they just kill them, but ordinary people. You wonder, civilians. Were they Nazis, or were they? You don't like to shoot somebody that doesn't have a gun, but if they're aiming at you, you want to put an end to it.
What did you learn about yourself in World War II that you might not have known otherwise?
Well, I don't know. I knew I could be. I knew fear. Nervous, shaky fear. Knees shaking. You've seen the cartoons, and you get that way. And the first time we had to clear a town, we came to a roadblock, and the question I asked was, "How long are we going to be gone out of our half track?" And somebody said, "You better get enough, kid." And I had 3 bandoliers over each shoulder, 3 hand grenades on each suspender strap, and I started out, to clear the town, and they're all, "Look at the kid." I had enough ammunition for the whole squad, probably. But, the guy says, "Get enough," and, you never learn. You got to do it to learn it, I guess.
When you look back over the time before you went to the war and during the war, was it what you expected?
Yeah, I had some friends that one of them was on Omaha Beach on D-Day, and he was wounded. Um, I don't remember what division he was in, and my brother was in 45th Division. He was drafted in 1943, I think it was, year before me, or 42 maybe, 42 I guess it was. And he went to basic training at Fort McClellan, Alabama, and he never came home until the war was over. He ended up joining the 45th Division in North Africa, went through North Africa, Salerno, up into France. And then one day after the war, they were in Munich, the 45th, he was in Munich and I was in Augsburg. And they got a Jeep and drove down to Augsburg, and we had a reunion.
What was that like?
Hard to describe.
Did he make it through the war without being,
Oh yeah,
without being wounded?
yeah. Some people are lucky. Yeah, there's a lot of them that weren't so lucky. You know, there's an old guy that I visit here at the Oklahoma Veterans Center. He doesn't have any legs. And, he can't get out of bed by himself. They have to lift him out. He's 84 years old. And I visit him and listen to his stories. And he'll tell me the same thing over and over again, but he's got somebody to talk to for a little while. But he can't get around. And, you think about people like that, and it's how fortunate I was.
You were not wounded?
No. I wanted, that's another thing. I wanted to enlist when I got out of high school. I had just turned 17 when I graduated from high school. I was a little bit early. And I wanted to enlist, and my father wouldn't sign for me. He said, sleep in your own bed as long as you can. And when I turned 18, I had to register for the draft and had no control over what happened then. But he was concerned because he had a Purple Heart from World War I. As a matter of fact, he had he was wounded by shrapnel, and then he was gassed. So he had a cluster, Purple Heart with a cluster. And he was concerned about us. But I remember one time, of course I corresponded, wrote home as often as I could. And he was always, when he'd write to me, he'd be guessing where we were. And of course we couldn't write home, all our writing was censored. And I wrote home one time and told him a story about being in a house that had a Victrola. You know what those are. And I saw the skaters' waltz. So the next time I got a letter from him, he says, cross the Danube. Our censor didn't catch it.
Did you and your brother get home at the same time?
No. I got home, of course, after the war. I was home right VJ Day. A few days later, I was home. I had to go back. Of course, I wasn't, But when he came home, he was out. He came home the following January. And he was all done. His time was up. And I stayed until the following July of 46, from Fort Lewis. Boy, I made a lot of Army camps.
What did it feel like between, just on hold, or just, you said you didn't enjoy after moving from place to place, but what were they doing with all you guys?
Basic training. One cycle of basic training after another, down at good old Camp Swift. It was a terrible place. People were, they were signing petitions, writing to congressmen, And most of them were all combat veterans, going through this Mickey Mouse close order drill and extended order drill and rifle range and all the things you do in basic training. But I got into the motor pool, and that kind of eased it a little bit. I could get out of all kinds of details.
So how long were you in the motor pool? That last?
Well, I got in there, it was in probably about November of 45, October, November 45, and I was in it until I got out in 46.
When, I know after the war was over, some people stayed to, kind of clean up and help with getting the citizenry back and stuff. How was that decided? I mean, how come you didn't stay in Europe, or did they just need you in the Pacific so bad?
I don't know why they did it. A number of people that I took basic training with ended up. They were in, I think, still in the 12th Armored Division until it was disbanded. When all the high point guys were leaving, tech sergeants and master sergeants and everything, these guys that took basic training with me ended up with those ratings. And who made the decisions is beyond me. I'd just soon be home. There's a fellow that, Glenn Waltner, he lived in Norman, Oklahoma for a while, was telling me a story about how he became, after the war, he became General Allen's personal driver. And he ended up in all kinds of fancy places. Paris and Riviera and, places like that. And he was, I suppose, maybe a T5 or a buck sergeant or something.
Well, as you look over your time in the service, is there one, like if you were to wake up today or you're walking through your day and something of World War II that you remember, could you share something? Is there something like that that you could share with us?
Something that I would remember?
It's just sort of, just kind of sticks out.
Oh, I can remember when I got off the boat at Le Havre, I thought to myself that I'm not going home like that. I don't know how I'm going to get home, but not that way. And then, of course, when we did go home, it was on the SS Porpoise. It was a Liberty ship. And we didn't have space below deck. We went home on the deck. But it only took, I think it only took 6 days or 7 days, something like that. Whereas going over in a convoy way, it was terrible. North Atlantic in the wintertime, a big, those ships would just pitch around, oh, terrible. Especially when you're in a garbage squad hauling stuff up,
Is there one funny thing that happened, something that, there was lots of sad things. Is there a funny thing that stands out in your mind?
Yeah, I can remember one incident. Well, it wasn't funny to begin with, but the war was over and we were doing patrolling, around different little towns and everything. And we were walking out. We'd been out for a long time, and I didn't have a canteen with me for some reason. We didn't have them, and I was terribly thirsty. And there was this fountain in this little town, and people were drinking. I thought, if they can do it, I can. And I drank some water, and a few days later, I guess I had dysentery or something. Oh, I thought I was going to die and couldn't wait. And I couldn't eat, and I was vomiting, and just terrible sick headaches, and finally I got feeling pretty good. And one morning, and this was maybe about a week, and terrible. And I got my mess kit and headed for the chow line, and they were making pancakes. And the closer I got, I started to smell that food cooking, and I developed dry heaves. And, boy, you should have seen that line scatter. It was a field kitchen set up, and those poor cooks, they were all upset with me. I couldn't help it, but my my illness obviously wasn't over.
I always like to ask everybody this question. If you were to say something or to leave a specific message about either something you learned or something that you would like to share about World War II, and you'd want children, kids in school to hear this, what would that be that you learned about either yourself, the war, the world?
It's the wrong way to settle differences. That's the thing that I'd learned from it. I don't think wars will ever end. Like we've got the UN now, and the question I ask is which war is it prevented? We have Bosnia going on now. We got troops in Haiti. Philippines, I think they're having trouble. All over the world, people are still, whether it's greed or lust for power, the ones in charge are being fought by people that want to be in charge. And I guess that's human nature, maybe never end, but it sure would be nice. I don't know if that's a lesson that I learned or whether it's something that, would be, it's obvious, it should be obvious to everybody.
Tell me what you did after the war. Did you have a family?
Well, after the war, of course, I stayed in the military until I got out. I just bided my time and got out in July of '46 and joined what was known as the 5220 Club. It's $20 a week for 52 weeks. As a veteran, you were entitled to that much, and because I had signed up to go to school, and so I went to school, got a degree in mechanical engineering, and got out in 1949, and I had a job all lined up with American Car and Foundry about 6 months before, well, about a year before I graduated, I guess. I was pretty much lined up. And about 6 months before I got out of school, they went bankrupt. And there was a bad year. 1949 was kind of a depression year, a recession. So I ended up driving an ice cream truck, probably making more money than I would starting out in engineering. And did that for a couple of years, and then I went to work for the electromotive division of General Motors. And I was testing generators and traction motors that they put in locomotives. Did that for a couple of years. And then I went to work for Fairbanks Morse in their diesel division, involved with diesel, not so much diesel locomotives, but diesel engines used for stationary power plants and pumps and things like that. And then I went to work for the Mall Tool Company, and that was a company that made small power tools, chainsaws and electric drills and kind of thing you'd see in a hardware store. And after that, I went to work for the Boeing Company in Wichita, and worked there until 1970, and came to Norman and went to work for U.S. Postal Service. In 1989, I checked it all in. And now I've got the best job I ever had.
Give the time away and
boy,
hobbies.
yeah. I'm spending a lot of time now trying to edit film tapes of pictures that I've shot on vacations and And I really didn't keep a very good inventory record. My filing was terrible. And I'm trying to improve on that now, and it's a rough job. But it's a relaxing job, no pressure. I'm doing it myself.
Is there anything I've left out? Any area of your war experience that I've left out, or something you wanted to tell me and I forgot, I didn't bring it up, or?
No, nothing I can think of. I didn't tell you the bad things, and I don't think I will.
Yeah, I was thinking, I thought, well, you haven't told me any bad things yet. Yeah.
Well, the first time it occurred on this trip on the 40 and 8s. Daylight, we boarded in the dark with all our worldly belongings, and there are no beds or bunks or seats in these boxcars, and very uncomfortable throughout the night. And daylight came, and pretty soon they broke out K rations, and we had our mess kits open. Everybody's sitting cross-legged on the floor of the boxcar. And I was looking for a place. Somebody lost his helmet during the night. And I was looking for a place where I could settle down and where I could break open my K rations. And I spotted over in the corner a stack of blankets. And I thought, my golly, nobody's sitting there. That'd be a good seat. So I struggled over, stepping over these guys that are squatting around on the floor. And I sat down in the blankets, and it rocked. And there's the missing helmet. And I thought, well, I was going to do like a table trick. You pull the tablecloth out, and all the silverware and dishes settled down. And I reached under, and I got the lip of that helmet, and I pulled it out, and it splattered all over the guy sitting there, all over his coat, his overcoat. Now, don't ask me what it was. And this guy came up with fire in his eye. And they grabbed him, the other two guys around grabbed him, and then finally it occurred to him that I didn't do it deliberately. It was an accident, but it was a terrible thing, in this boxcar, with no sanitary provisions. And this poor guy is covered with it all over the front of his overcoat.
And y'all were there in those things for how many hours?
Well, a better part of it, all night long and part of the next day. Those are things that happen, I guess, in wartime. I don't know, but not good to talk about in polite circles. It's not an after-dinner story. That's yeah. Yeah. No, the times that your clothes get dirty and no place to take a bath, and finally when you find a place, maybe it's an old German barracks or something where they have showers, hot water. And the weather is not, nice. It's cold, and you get into this shower, and it's freezing cold water, and but you do it anyway because you want to feel clean for a change, it's very discomfortable. And, I slept in a bed one night with one foot on the floor. It was so full. We didn't very often get to sleep in a bed. And I thought, this is my chance. And I worked my way in, but I had to keep one foot on the floor to keep from falling. I was only halfway in, but it was worth that effort just to, sleep on the floor or on the ground. And always tired. I can remember riding, and the seat that I had in the half track was right by the gas tank, and the seat was short. So I was really not very, very uncomfortable all the time. And I'd take my rifle and set it down between my legs and take my helmet off, set it on top of the rifle, and then I put my chin on it and try to rest. Of course, you're bouncing all the time, going along, and you'd actually could go to sleep walking sometimes. Matter of fact, I nearly walked, this was in basic training, walked into the guy ahead of me. I was starting to fall asleep. Well, it's a terrible feeling. Your life is at stake, and you can hardly stay awake. It's very uncomfortable.
Were your nerves, were you always kind of on, does war just make you on edge all the time?
No. I remember another experience that occurred to me. We arrived at this. We didn't capture this place, but we arrived there. Well, maybe we did. I don't know. A jet plane assembly plant along an autobahn where the median was green concrete. And nighttime we put up guard duty. We were set out to guard different road intersections. I was set out. It was still daylight. They gave me a light machine gun and my rifle, of course, at this highway intersection. And I was supposed to be relieved in, 4 hours, or supposed to be relieved during the night. Well, no relief ever came. And I thought, well, did they think I went AWOL, or, can't they find me? I was worried. And it started to rain, and the ditch I was in started to fill up with water. And, maybe it helped keep me awake. And then I heard this noise. It sounded like airplanes. And tanks did sound sometimes in the distance, sound like an airplane. And I thought, those are tanks coming. And I thought, what am I going to do with a little lousy machine gun against a tank? And pretty soon, I could see him in the dark coming along, and I thought, what can I do? I got some hand grenades, and I got a rifle and a machine gun. I can't stop those tanks. And I saw the big white star on it. And then I hunkered down. I thought, gee, I hope they don't see me. They're liable to shoot me. Think I'm a German, Next morning came, and pretty soon why they came to pick me up, never a word said, about why they didn't relieve me. And this is why, when I talk about the company commander, I really didn't know the man, but things like that shouldn't happen. I don't think he was really much of a leader. Of course, there was a lot of them like that. I remember when I went overseas, I decided to buy a $50 war bond every month because I have no need for money. And when I came back from overseas, I decided that I'd keep it up as long as I could. And when I got to the 2nd Infantry Division down at Camp Swift, my allotment was automatically canceled. And maybe a month or two later, they had a war bond drive. And I was recruited. I was told to report. I was going to be a solicitor, war bond solicitor. And we went into this big room, and a full colonel, started giving us a sales pitch about talking to the troops, talking them into signing up to buy war bonds. And then he got all done with his pitch, and he wanted, is there any questions? And what is it, soldier? Well, sir, what I'd like to know is, why did this chicken outfit cancel my war bond allotment when I came in, and now you're trying to recruit me to buy some more? And I was dropped from the list. I was not a recruiter.
Well, it's about time for us to go. We gotta do something. But I appreciate your time. I really do.
Well, I hope it was some value to you. I don't know whether I'm.
The special thing is we can always pull different things out. I mean, we